Alright folks, in this particular video we will in fact be speaking about global warming, and in doing so we will be highlighting certain key concepts. Alright, in terms of the definition of global warming, what are the contributors associated with global warming, potential effects. Alright, although we know fully well these effects are very broad, but we will in fact be referring to some of the major effects that is. And last but not least, we'll simply be touching very briefly upon climate change. All right. Now let us begin quickly. Now, what is global warming? It is in fact a natural process. All right. I want to re-emphasize that global warming is a natural process. However, human activities are accelerating this natural process. The Earth has naturally been experiencing warm as well as cool phases, right? But our activities today are in fact accelerating the natural process. All right, where the average temperatures of the world or the average temperatures of the planet, all right, are in fact increasing. Now, in the previous video with respect to greenhouse gas emissions, we saw that greenhouse gases can in fact contribute, all right, to the warming effect of the Earth, which is, like we said, a natural process. However, we are adding more of these particular gases in the environment. Now, what are some of the major contributors to global warming? Now, I just cited four major ones here, and we highlighted here deforestation. All right, as you can see on the screen, deforestation is in fact something which is very broad, where forest fires can be associated with clearance, all right, of the natural vegetative cover. All right. Also, you can take in consideration logging initiatives, right? Logging initiatives are also associated or underway over a very large scale in developed as well as developing regions. All right. This is actually associated with economic activities as well. Now, all of them, right? Logging, slash and burn, or even fires, right, can contribute to carbon dioxide emissions, amongst many other things, into the atmosphere. Carbon dioxide is one of the most significant greenhouse gases that we mentioned previously. Now, apart from that, we can also have emissions, right? Emissions from vehicles, all right? This can actually induce nitrous oxides into the atmosphere, and especially if we are referring to very built up or very congested areas, for example, cities and very congested regions where there's a lot of vehicular traffic. Okay. Thirdly, I'd like to mention um, overgrazing, right? Unsustainable agricultural practices. Overgrazing happens to be one of them. For example, if we have a lot of herds, well, sheep, everybody should know sheep will literally eat down to the ground, like literally, all right? And they will literally remove the vegetative cover, right, over a vast area. And technically, that will contribute to minimal vegetative cover on the surface of the land. All right. Apart from that, there are other means through which greenhouse gases can facilitate the global warming effect. And this is associated with slash and burn agriculture, which is often associated with less developed countries or developing countries, as a matter of fact, all right, on a very relatively larger scale in comparison to developed nations. So slash and burn agriculture is in fact something which is very significant. And we also must take into consideration as well, we have excessive tillage. All right, look at this grand scale in this particular image, where this vehicle, right, is simply removing the previously existing vegetative cover or crop, right, and it's churning the soil. Now, that churning effect and mixing of the soil can actually break apart rock structures. It can reduce the consolidated nature of the components of the ground. Sometimes in the subsurface regions below this region here, you could actually have gases trapped and locked within rocks or locked under a significant body of material. So the ground can actually act as a major store of greenhouse gases, particularly referring to carbon dioxide. But if we till, sorry, and we churn the soil and we mix it continuously, habitually over a long period of time, expanding our range and encompassing very large areas, this can be relatively unsustainable in terms of our agricultural practice. This is mainly associated with commercial agriculture. All right. Now, folks, we also have pollution. All right. Pollution can be associated with industrial or factory emissions. It can also be associated with domestic as well as residential, even agricultural. All right. Pollution is associated with population increases. All right. Also, our culture, the manner in which we produce and consume resources, can influence our level of pollution. It can impact upon the environment in a very disastrous way, especially if our consumption levels are very, very high. All right. So pollution can manifest itself into land pollution. All right. And land pollution, as you can see on the screen here, can be associated with debris, materials, or whatever, all the way they can wash down into the aquatic environments, all right, thereby contaminating them even further. Now, there can also be suspended materials and also soluble pollutants as well. Many of them may not necessarily be seen, but pollution has a very detrimental effect upon the environment. Now, with respect to that, we can see that land pollution can also relate to aquatic pollution as well, and or even marine pollution. For example, this canister of oil, this barrel of oil here, is flowing towards the marine environment. Oil is a very toxic thing. All right. In addition to this, we can see on the screen also that sometimes the marine environment can be subjected to oil spills over very, very grand areas, and they can be combusted. This also has an impact upon the atmosphere. Now, when the same gas or particulates, which is combusted materials, is airborne, eventually when it rainfalls, these said sediments can simply be thrown back into the sea or onto the land. All right. And how is that? How is all of this linked to global warming? Well, first and foremost, students, all right, we can know fully well that plankton, all right, plankton is in fact a very important thing. Plankton is, well, phytoplankton specifically. These are very small microscopic plant-like organisms which photosynthesize and take in carbon dioxide during the day. All right, they actively utilize carbon dioxide, thereby aiding, right, in terms of reducing the carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere as well as in the water. But folks, pollution can affect the resilience and the productivity of plankton. If plankton productivity is reduced, there will be less oxygen being produced in the waterways. If phytoplankton productivity is affected, there will be more carbon dioxide emissions in the surrounding water. And this will actually result in a very deleterious effect where it can contribute to the oceans becoming acidified. And more acidic conditions can contribute to low biodiversity ratios or values in the oceans and the marine environment. I just want to touch on something in our previous view that we had earlier. You see trees here? Trees actively take in carbon dioxide mainly during the daytime. Well, during the daytime, during photosynthetic processes. And that is actually very important. They are the terrestrial organisms which can simply take in carbon dioxide during the day, all right, and reducing the concentration during daytime, thereby reducing the temperature, potential rise in temperature. All right. If there is less CO2 emissions, less carbon emissions, there can potentially be lower temperature in the given environment. Okay. All right. Let's move quickly into the effects of global warming. All right. For example, the ice caps or glaciers can be subject to melting, especially in the cool environments, which is a very significant thing. For instance, in the year 2019, a very large chunk of ice, right, in Antarctica, right, equivalent to the size of Delaware, broke apart. Imagine that. That is because of warmer temperatures. So the Arctic and the Antarctic, which are polar regions, are essentially becoming warmer. Apart from the ice melting, right, apart from the glacier melt and stuff like that, we have to also take into consideration that because of the quantity of ice that is melted into the environment is actually becoming fresh water. Well, water, it is mixing with the salt water, We must bear in mind that the volume of water in relation to the land will actually increase, which will actually low-lying areas can be subjected to uh, coastal flooding or inundation. All right, and that's, for example, the small islands or relatively low-lying regions like the Maldives, right, or the Maldives, whichever you want to pronounce it. These islands can, in fact, be subjected to inundation at a very large extent. Coastal flooding can be very significant as well. Thirdly, right, when there is, in fact, a greater volume of water in relation to the land, there can, in fact, be a very significant effect, which is erosion. Coastal erosion, because of a greater volume of water in contact with the land, can in fact affect certain areas. For example, this image here is in fact East Trinidad. This is Cocos Bay, also known as Manzanilla. All right, there is a great degree of erosion where the coconut trees are becoming dislodged and they are simply moving further towards the water, especially at high tide levels. All right, this tantamounts to land which is essentially being lost. Now, folks, if the atmosphere is actually becoming warmer, all right, we must bear in mind that the sea surface temperatures can also become warmer as well. All right, what does that mean? Oceans absorb a vast amount of warmth or heat in the entire Earth. And in doing so, that is because of their voluminous nature. All right, look at the depth of the ocean. Heat energy will simply move further down. All right, that means there's a great volume of water which can absorb a significant amount of warmth. And in doing so, the surface temperatures of the water themselves can become warmer. So warmer sea surface temperatures can be associated, especially with marine environments. All right. Now, when you have warmer sea surface temperatures, you tend to realize that atmospheric disturbances like hurricanes and depressions and cyclones and stuff like that can become more and more pronounced. Why? Because they feed upon the thermal energy on the surface of oceans. There's an indirect effect, right? When these low pressure systems come into contact with the coastal or the land-based environments, all right, we can actually be faced with infrastructural as well as economic damages. Another effect of global warming is that the tropical environments, which are already existingly warm, right, they are becoming drier and essentially hotter. The Arctic region, right, which is the northern region, or the North Pole, I should say, as well as the Antarctic region here, these are the poles. They are becoming warmer, right? If you look at this particular polar bear, which is typically associated with the Arctic region, there is in fact less ice structures or for this particular organism to simply move around. All right, these animals can essentially starve to death and they could also be exhausted as well because the acquisition of food can be very difficult, very challenging. Given the fact that their mobility, right, is in fact compromised. For some of the tropical regions, you might actually have this effect taking place where the blistering heat and the minimal amount of rainfall can contribute to the land to become very much crusted. All right, and this can lead to further land degradation. Okay, a term which we refer to as desertification can in fact be induced. So certain vegetative cover can in fact be subjected to what you call forest recession or quote unquote forest dieback. All right, because the temperatures can in fact be relatively warm and can affect their productivity. All right, this can actually occur in the temperate regions or as well as certain parts of the tropical environments as well. All right, throughout the entire world, as a matter of fact. Last but certainly not least, we also have coral reefs can in fact be subjected to bleaching. Right, for example, this is in fact in the Buku Reef in Tobago, right, which have actually experienced bleaching events in the past given the warmer sea surface temperatures. All right, and this is where you see the corals actually becoming white, which is a very degrading effect upon the corals themselves, which can thereby reduce the biodiversity of the environment. All right, so the concept of climate change is in fact something which is very, very contentious. As a matter of fact, some believe that climate change is something which is relatively new, all right, where the Earth is in fact changing in terms of the atmospheric conditions. However, others argue that there is nothing new about it. As a matter of fact, the Earth has in fact undergone certain changes, right, from ice ages to interglacial periods, which are mini warming events, and then the ice age again, on the natural premise. All right, so this is a very contentious view. However, we must take into consideration and bear in mind that we humans, we are in fact contributing to the atmospheric changes and alterations in the environment. All right, so that is one thing we must actually take away. All right, we will talk about climate change in a different video later on. All right, students, any questions you all feel free to let me know. You all keep good. I hope this video was actually informative. You all keep take care. Keep good.